Welcome to Game Savers Podcast, your next-gen gaming podcast for news, reviews, previews, impressions, analyses, and now Cyberpunk 2077, because today that's what we're here to talk about. We've got myself in the house, and we've also got Wayne joining us.
Yes, I'm Wayne, and I love video games that aren't buggy
And
and
we've
glitchy.
That's right, that's right. We've got Game Savers Strive member John Connor coming back to the scene of the crime.
Hello. I also like video games, and sometimes ones that are buggy and glitchy.
How about that? And then we've got Alex Dissonance coming into the house as well, coming back.
Yeah, hi, my name is Alex, and usually I save games twice.
Twice, a double game. So what we're here to talk about, and I'm glad we waited a month or two to have this conversation. It feels like 2 months, that transition from 2020 to 21. But again, I'm glad we waited to have this conversation because so many things have happened since the launch of Cyberpunk 2077. You know, the lawsuits, the backlash, this and that. And we're going to talk about all that here in just a little bit. We've got a lot of perspective in this room as well. So some of us have beat the game. Some of us have played a lot of hours into it. Some of us have just been scared to death to completely touch it. So ultimately, this is really to decide if you're one of those people that hasn't bought this game yet, or if you refunded it and want to know if it's worth coming back to. Is this game worth playing in January of 2021? So again, a lot of perspectives here. We brought in the experts in the form of Wayne, John, and Alex. So I guess the first question I want to ask you guys before we dive into, the controversy, your gameplay experience, and what all that was like. First question I want to ask you is, what was the first game that you can recall in your life that just left you absolutely in shambles and completely disappointed?
Okay,
Ouch.
I mean, I don't know if it was necessarily the very first one, but I have to shout out Fallout 3 for that one. Whenever I got Fallout 3, I was never really big into RPGs. Got Fallout 3, started playing it. Didn't actually dig it to start with, but after about 7 or 8 hours, everything just started to click, and I completely fell in love with that game. Adored it, everything about it. Just felt like a game like no game I'd ever played before. Was absolutely loving it. Got about 60 hours in, and I got to a bit where there's like a big water tank in the middle of a circular room.
I know what you're
And
talking about.
you
Yeah.
do a little bit of story bit, and then whenever I tried to walk out the door, I got a loading screen every single time, and I stopped it, turned the game off, turned it back on, done it again, and no matter what, I could not get through that door. And I had to
That's Bethesda for you.
sit and wait for patches. And people were saying, like, go back to your previous save. My previous save was like 10 hours back, and there was no way I was going back. So I was sitting waiting for patches, and the next patch came out, and then it was like, as soon as the day came that the patch came out, load up the game, see if I can get through this door. Nope. And I think it was about 3 or 4 patches down the line, like maybe
Wow.
two months of not playing the game. And then whenever I finally got it that one day, I was like, walked up to the door, pressed the button to open the door, loading screen, sit there waiting. And I got through, and it was like, yes. I mean, it was almost the best part of the game, just getting over that bug that had stopped me from progressing through the story.
So you had a game breaker glitch. So was your mega
Absolutely.
disappointment? Man, that's
Nightmare.
always a bummer.
I've actually got another one that I've mentioned before. Prince of Persia: Sands of Time, the first one. I think I played it on GameCube. It's got like a little percentage indicator, tells you how far through the game you are. And I think I was at like 93% of the way through. And then just got a game breaking glitch that just there was no way of progressing past. But I love that game so much that I just went, you know what, start new game, and played it from scratch the whole way through and go through the game.
And back then you couldn't, rely on patches or online updates on the GameCube.
No,
so at least we've got that going for us in, this era. But Alex, John, what about you guys?
Well, yeah, like just two games come to mind immediately. One game, and you guys know I'm a huge Halo fan, so I was of course super stoked when Halo 2 came out. Like bought it on launch day with a friend of mine, and we were like completely pumped. Oh yeah, we're gonna play this. It's gonna be so good. Started playing it, finish it the same day, like with the most like just the ending just left us baffling. We dropped our controllers heavily, if you know what I mean, because we were so disappointed. And it's just like, yeah, finishing this fight. Okay, we're like, okay, cool. We're gonna go to Earth, and it's gonna be the last level. It's gonna be so sick. It's gonna be so badass. Credits. Seriously?
Ooh.
Oh yeah, like
the worst cliffhanger.
Oh yeah, totally. And to this day, I think like Halo 2 is my least favorite game in the series, and I know this is gonna get some flack, but it is really my least favorite game in the series. Uh,
Whoa.
yeah. I know, weird, right?
That's the kind of impression those bad memories will leave on you. What about you, John?
See, nothing major jumped to mind because there's definitely a few games that I've played and kind of went, this doesn't click with me. But I tend to have like expectations that pretty average anyway. I don't really get overhyped for games. But the one that probably let me down most would probably be Dragon Age 2. Because I loved Dragon Age 1. Like, I thought it was a fantastic game, and I was like, I'm really excited for the sequel. And they just made it into Mass Effect. And they took out like a lot of the choice and things to make it more commercial. And the thing is about that really bothered me was Dragon Age sold more than Mass Effect. So why did they make Mass Effect like? Why did they make Dragon Age?
Why would they pull from the other?
Because if we try to make it more mainstream success, because I think maybe like the merch sale or something might be less for Dragon Age, but they just like streamlined it down. And Dragon Age 2 just did not click with me at all. I actually enjoyed like Dragon Age 1 and Inquisition a lot more than 2. I just kind of pretend they never made 2.
The weakest entry in the series by far for Dragon Age 2. So wow, some Fallout 3, Halo 2, and Dragon Age 2. I guess I'll say from me, Rise, Son of Rome, mega disappointment.
Oh yeah.
Who can forget that on the Xbox One launch? I remember I was actually with my brother watching that trailer at E3 when it had dropped with some gameplay, and it just looks like this huge. And I don't know if it was marketed this way, I can't remember or not, but it just looked like this huge, crazy, expansive, like Roman era battle where it's basically just a nonstop campaign of battle scenes and things like that. Go out, maybe it's open world-esque, maybe it's not, we didn't really know that. But man, when that game came out, it was completely on rails, as linear as could be. Ultra dry story. I mean, just didn't click at all. I'd say going back even deeper into my memory for digging through scar tissue there for stuff that really hurt back in the day. I'd say Rome Total War. I mean, these sound like really similar, but Rome from the Total War series was one of the first entries on PC. I don't remember what year that dropped. I think it was really early 2000s. And I just had this super shitty, I think it was a Compaq laptop at the time. And, not knowing any better, just the game hardly ran. It was game breaking. And sure enough, years later, it still gets talked about on PC. But for me, that was a big letdown too. It was just, having a game and it, was so bugged out that you couldn't even play it no matter how hard you tried. So those are my big disappointing scars forever in my memory. I'm sorry, Wayne, about Rise, Son of Rome, but it's got to be said years later.
I think we've touched on that one before. I honestly think it was just a matter of Microsoft and Crytek not setting proper expectations for what the game was. And I think we're seeing this with a lot of games at the minute, where there's games coming out, like the games where we're getting CGI trailers and stuff, and we're sitting going, "Oh, that looks amazing. What is it?" And it's just people then speculate as to what the actual game is, and if it doesn't end up being what they thought it was going to be, then it automatically gets tagged as a bad game, which isn't necessarily the case,
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, I mean, you think even like 5-10 years ago, right, where if you had a CGI trailer, you were like, oh cool, like this game looks amazing. But now you see a CGI trailer and you're like, all right, where's the fucking gameplay?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know this is not going to be what the game looks like by any stretch of the imagination, maybe in a cutscene, but that's
and
it.
And I also think like even more games get CGI trailers nowadays. Just to think back of the Xbox showcase last year when they showcased the games coming to the Xbox Series X, it's like, I don't know, 70%, 80% just CGI trailers, and you're just sitting there. All right, where's the poop?
I do think the industry standard seems to be, teaser trailer first of all, then a CGI trailer, then further down the line we get gameplay. Now, personally speaking, I'll happily watch a CGI trailer and go, this is how it works. This is what we get first of all, and look at it and go, okay, I'm interested. You've got my interest, but I'm not excited yet because I'm not going to be excited until I see gameplay.
See, a big issue at the minute though is they keep putting out CG trailers and calling them gameplay trailers. Because there's this conversation with a friend of mine recently about because obviously as around Cyberpunk discussion, like No Man's Sky obviously came up in the same conversation, and I was saying, but should they just put a CGI trailer first? They didn't call it gameplay, and they point out they did call it gameplay. And I went back and looked at every trailer with that initial reveal was marked gameplay. But like, as obviously widely known now, that was like a CG trailer they knocked out before, like just announced the game, and like half the team had never seen it before. The game was in that early development. And I think, how did they what makes the gameplay truly anymore? Because it used to be that like a cinematic reveal, but like now you'll see something that says gameplay, and you watch it, and like that little tag at the bottom saying not actual gameplay is up the entire time, and it's like
that or like in-game engine footage, I think is the
yeah,
go-to cliche
yeah.
right now in trailers. Yep.
At no point are they going to say actually no one's controlling this. And whenever they go on stage at E3 and hold the controllers, and they're clearly not controlling what's happening on screen, like they're putting all this illusion on that this is gameplay when it's just not.
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
It's a beautiful thing. So before we dive even deeper into Cyberpunk and we talk about, just what a tough month it's been since that game has come out, want to ask you guys, how did you first come about CDPR, CD Projekt Red? Is this your first introduction to them, or have you played the Witcher titles previously? How did you end up coming about that company?
Yeah, someone else go first.
Okay. So my first introduction was I actually got the first Witcher game. Whenever it came out, because the box on it basically said it used the same engine as Skyrim. Not Skyrim, it was Oblivion at the time. It was in the same engine. And like the box literally for that game was advertising it as in the same engine as Oblivion. So I bought that with very different expectations for what that game was. But I remember playing through like the original Witcher and thinking like this feels really weird. Like it was like nothing like I'd ever played before. Then Witcher 2 came out and like it was a bit more of a commercial direction for it. Then Witcher 2 came out again and it was better. And then like Witcher 3 came out. And so I think I played like all their kind of big main games, but never really jumped into like the side games like Thronebreaker or anything. So I'm not too sure if they had any games out before the original Witcher, but I've been familiar with them for quite some time.
It's a good introduction to have. What about you guys?
Well,
Sorry, Alex. We know this. We've talked about this before. You know it, Tony, and you hate me for it. It was Witcher 2. Whenever Witcher 2 came out, I can't remember the name of it wasn't a remaster as such, but it was like a repackaging of it on the consoles and whatnot.
Yep.
Something to do with Kings, Witcher 2, blah, 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 Kings. And someone recommended it, and I played like the first 2 hours of it and just went, it's all right, and didn't bother. But I'll admit, I can't commit to like playing part 2 of a game first. So after that, I actually got Witcher 1 on PC and went back. Tony's disgusted. He's just walking away.
Yeah, I totally understand.
So went back and got Witcher 1. And as John says, like it is janky. It is just it's not a great game at all. The story and stuff's meant to be fantastic. And then whenever all the hype around Witcher 3 was about, I ended up getting that at a good price. And again, I played the first 10 hours. I mean, I really tried to commit to it, but it just did not click for me. Didn't click at all.
Yeah, that's really funny.
Unfucking believable. Alex, what about you?
I was just about to say it's really funny because it's really similar to me. I haven't played the first 2 games, so I then jumped in when the third game came out. Like everybody was talking about it, everybody was playing it. I'm like, yeah, I don't know, doesn't look that interesting to me. Started playing it. I think I went as far as like 2 or 3 hours in, then never touched it again. Just not for me.
See, this will be interesting because I'm also not a huge Witcher 3 fan either.
So be it. Well, I'll take the minority here and just say I fucking love The Witcher 3. I played that game over, all the DLC for it. It's up there as just one of my absolute top games of all time. And that was how I, ended up getting on the hype train for Cyberpunk. Was just being so impressed and blown away by The Witcher 3. Same as you, John. I think it was The Witcher 1 was the first one I played back on PC, way back in the day when the computers could hardly run it. And, like you said, Witcher 2 stepped up and then Witcher 3 is what it is. So those were my introductions prior to getting into Cyberpunk 2077, where we are today in 2020, 2021. So let's talk about your initial impressions of the game so far. So I guess we could get a lay of the land here and see what perceptions we're coming off of. So for example, myself, I am one that downloaded this game. I put about 6 hours into it on Steam. Also bought it on the PS5, just, as a kind of a backup, I guess, assuming this game was going to be great. Like, I'm just going to play it everywhere, dude. This game's never leaving me ever.
Just going to buy twice.
Yeah, it's just buy it twice. Might as well, dude, because I'm going to do it in the future anyway. And man, did that come back to bite me in the ass, because I put in 6 hours and now I'm just scared and I'm not coming back to it until it's fixed. And that's where I'm at on it. But what about the rest of you guys?
So yeah, like bought the collector's edition. As you can see, like I got the statue here. Was super hyped for it. Because I like cyberpunk movies, I like cyberpunk games, like all sci-fi stuff. That's really my thing. So, and I was so hyped when I saw the gameplay trailers. Of course, in the back of my head, I was always thinking, it's never going to look that good. It's never going to look that sleek. But I'm just going to adjust my expectations. It's going to be really cool. Game came out. Like I got my Xbox Series X one day before, finally. So thank God I didn't have to play it on the regular Xbox One. Enjoyed it, to be fair. I think, yeah, it had some bugs. It didn't crash on me once, some funny bugs. But then the bugs got more and more and more, and it just got worse and worse and worse. So, yeah.
And how many hours are you into it now, Alex?
About 50 hours.
50 hours deep.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's enough to make, I'd say, a pretty good, assumption or judgment of the game. What about you, John?
So I got it on PC, and like unlike everyone else, I actually did not buy into the hype at all. I had legitimately not even watched a single trailer for this before it came out. I knew there was hype about it. I knew it was the CD Projekt Red game, and I knew I was going to buy it day one because I like RPGs. I'm not the biggest CD Projekt Red fan, but I knew it basically as part of the cultural zeitgeist in gaming, it was going to be talked about a lot. So I picked it up and played it, and I beat it in about 45 to 50 hours.
Wow. So you've already beat the game?
Yeah, I beat the game.
Wow. Yeah. Holy Toledo. And Wayne, what about you?
I haven't touched it. I had pre-ordered it, which is something I actually preach against doing. So it kind of broke my own rules there. Pre-ordered it the day before release. A friend started messaging me. I think it was the day before release, saying, "Have you seen the absolute shit show that this game is?" And he's a friend who's prone to exaggeration. So I was kind of like, okay, tell me what's going on. He says, it is a buggy piece of shit. The whole game is a mess. Everyone's having problems. It has been released way too early. It's a nightmare. Like, we've waited 8 years for this, and it's just a complete nightmare. And I'm not believing him. I'm thinking there's probably a few wee bugs and he's blowing this all out of proportion. But then I started looking into it, and the videos started hitting Twitter and Instagram, and everything's on YouTube, and things are just lighting up with it happened. The thing that everyone said wouldn't happen, i.e. Cyberpunk being dung, is happening. And it was just like, I can't have this. This is the reason I don't pre-order games in the first place. I made one exception, and it's completely backfired on me. So I went straight away. I hadn't launched the game. It was
not even launched.
It was the next day.
Wow! So it has completely scared you out of even playing the game.
I hadn't launched the game on Xbox at all, and I went straight on to Xbox.com and I got a refund. And it came through within an hour, and I just decided there and then I am not even touching this thing, because every time I play a game, I want to play the best version of the game. It's the reason that I bought a Series X, and there's no games you can play on Series X. Virtually no games you can play on Series X that you can't play on the Xbox One X or the Xbox One. So I essentially bought that to buy the best version of games. That's what I want. I always want to play the best version of a game. What they released on day one just isn't, and not even close, so I'm just going to wait. I would rather play it a year down the line and play a good version of the game than play it now and just not enjoy
be disappointed.
Yeah. Just have the shine taken off it by problems that shouldn't be there.
Wow. So this is a good little boardroom we have here of people that have beat the game, some that are, pretty deep into it. Obviously assuming there's some side questing going on there too. Some of us that have just been, completely given up. Some that have, just completely been scared away from even starting the goddamn game based on the last month or so. So let's talk about the past month then. I'm going to run over these really quick, and then we can, maybe go back and dissect some of these. So obviously this game was hyped up for about 8 years. We had 3 or 4 delays. How many now? I forget. I
think it's 4.
Four total delays over the course of 8 years. And that hype train really took off when The Witcher 3 ended up being a huge success. Obviously, CD Projekt Red got a huge amount of respect from the gaming community based on just how good that game was. The Keanu Reeves thing happened at E3, became a huge meme. And, there was no going back after that. This game was on a fucking rocket to the moon. And that hype train there was nothing to do but crash. There were no brakes. And obviously, as far as controversies go, whether these are controversial or not. This is just some of the stuff that's happened in the last month. But, we found out about the mandatory crunch over there at CD Projekt Red. Some opinions there. The Metacritic score reviews are a lot rougher than we expected. 86, not too bad from, critic reviews, but a 7.2 from users. Yikes. As far as the reviews you were talking about, Wayne, when those started rolling out, we know now that there were a lot of really tight embargo restrictions on those, things like, hey, you're only allowed to show the stock gameplay footage we gave you. Don't show anything about bugs, this, that, and the other, which is just kind of weird and not something we see very often as far as what's handed to reviewers. We saw just this huge amount of toxicity towards those poor goddamn souls out there that were the first to review this game and say, hey, it's shit. Everybody was like, well, you don't know shit about it, whatever. But some of that ended up becoming true just based on what was out there. The seizure triggering animations, lack of an epilepsy warning there, which they've since fixed, but that was a huge deal too. The stock shares took a 30% nosedive almost right out of the gate once everybody's kind of started to see what was going on there. The devs came out and offered an apology, which we don't see very often. I think sometimes we'll see apologies for things like, hey, the servers are down. It's our launch day. Obviously things are busy. Apologies for the inconvenience. We're working on a fix. But to come out and say, hey, we just completely fucked up. The previous generations of this game, specifically the PS4 and Xbox One, are just trash and unplayable. And that's on us. It's just, to me, that's mind blowing to think that could even happen. I don't think anybody would have predicted that, 1, 2, 3, 8 years ago. Outside of that, Sony, they even pulled the game still to this day, Cyberpunk 2077. You can't get it on the PS Store. It's not there. You can't get this digitally. So whether that was, an integrity issue of not wanting to sell something on the platform that, just is unplayable, or it just prevents them from having to go through a huge backlog of people trying to get a refund anyway. Just a lot of stuff going on there. Now you've got lawsuits coming out left and right about if investors were misled about the state of the game, ahead of time and all this other fun stuff. I will say, outside of the backlash and some of these uglier things, we have got one saving grace out of all this, and that has just been some absolutely fantastic memes. We've had some absolutely incredible, bug animation glitches and things like that have come out in short 20, 30-second glitches. I think the best one I've seen so far is, like the Johnny Silverhand before and after, where he's like, the texture models haven't popped in or whatever it is. It just looks horrendous. But what did you guys think about all that? As all that was happening over the course of the last month, we've had some rough launches from other games in the past, but I certainly can't recall anything like this, especially here at the tail end of 2020. What more could be expected, right?
Yeah, like I would set this like this game is the same for me launch wise compared to Fallout 76 and Anthem. Like it's the same level of shittiness, and that's sad because I think in its core the game is still good. It's just like completely not finished. It's unpolished as hell, and they, even the last delay, just delaying it for 3 weeks, they should have delayed it for another year and maybe ditched the last gen consoles altogether, in my opinion, because you can really see those old machines are struggling with this, and poor optimization does the rest to it. This is not a last gen game. This is like a now next gen, current gen game, in my opinion, and they could have avoided a lot.
You see, that point you're making about how this isn't the last gen game, that's something I don't understand how CD Projekt Red got to that point, because this is a game that was at least conceived 8 years ago. We hadn't even heard of Xbox, One X.
Series
we hadn't even heard of PS4 Pro. All we had back then when they started making this game was Xbox One and PS4.
Yeah, Xbox One and PS4 weren't even announced when this game was announced.
Yeah,
they weren't even announced. That's true.
Yeah.
Just announced for a PC.
So that should have been the base level. It should have run on those consoles absolutely fine, given the full experience of the game. And then every iteration of console above that, i.e. Xbox One X, Series X, PS4 Pro, and PS5, everything above that should have been like icing on the cake. That should have been like a little bit of extra, slightly higher texture, slightly higher resolution. But the game should have been built and designed to run on those base consoles, because that's when the game was made, whenever those things were about. That's what it was promised for. I've seen a bunch of people online making comments like, what do you expect? You really expect this game to run on 7-year-old hardware? I was like,
Yes.
yeah, because that's what
Yeah.
they released it on those consoles and they
God damn
built
it.
on those consoles. It's not like having an aging graphics card where you kind of go, oh, you know, this is maybe seeing, you know, end of days here. If a game comes out for a console, it should be able to run on that console, and it is that simple, you know. I think it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous the state that they put it out on those base consoles.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I 100% agree with you on this.
Yeah.
I think they should have like targeted for the Xbox One and the PS4 and maybe the PC, but I think they went like full Duke Nukem Forever with this. Just the scope getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and they lost their target, what they were supposed to do or what they wanted to do. So we're just like, okay, there's going to be some new consoles. Let's target this. Let's not care about the last gen versions. So they completely lost their target, in my opinion.
The thing is, there only is, strictly speaking, there only is last gen versions. There isn't a PS5 or an Xbox Series X release of this game yet.
Yeah.
What we're playing on those consoles is backwards compatible versions of them. And yes, they've been tweaked a little bit to take advantage of that extra power. But, you know, to say that you really expect this to run on an Xbox, it's an Xbox game. It just is an Xbox game. So, of course, you should expect it to run on that hardware.
What were you saying, John?
Also, that point, I don't want to go into too much because we'll probably back this later. But this game does nothing next gen. Like, people keep saying the scope got too big, but I actually think this game is like really like it's not as in depth as a modern Ubisoft game or an Ubisoft game from the last 3 years. It's like an incredibly shallow experience. There's like there's just lots of talk about how the scope, like people went too far and too much with this, but all the like even in the consoles, not many people on screen at once. So I was going to say maybe it's populated too much, but it doesn't like the characters don't have AI. Like it doesn't do things that like games GTA 4 did on the 360. Like it's behind that.
But I think that's a good point. Like you said, the AI is shallow and everything, and I 100% agree. They just went with a world itself that is like full of little details and full of little things that you can see, not so much interact with it, and this is the wrong focus, in my opinion.
Yeah. It felt like they kind of let like an art and environmental design team go wild and then forgot to actually hire anybody else.
I think I do understand the point that some people are saying that this should have just been a next gen release. Should have just came to PS5 and Xbox Series X. But the fact of the matter is, in terms of an actual business decision, that would have been absolute madness because there just isn't the amount of consoles out there. There's just not a lot of PS5s and Xbox Series X.
Look, here's the point for that. Either way they would have handled it, it would have been a shit show. So if they canceled the last gen versions, people would be pissed. If they and now they're pissed because it released the state it is on the last gen consoles. So I think there was just no winning, and I really think it was more like the upper management against the developers.
Yeah,
at least it's the impression that I have.
And we've heard a little bit about that too, right? As far as, you know, some people within the company voicing their disdain for upper management, maybe saying like, hey, why did you, you know, push us into this? We were trying to tell you, you know, hey, it's not ready, or, you know, whatever the case may be, you know, with crunch and all that other stuff going on, it just wasn't going to make it up to speed in time for that eventual December 12th, I think it was, release. But that's a good point.
Another thing is that I don't think this release being bad is actually that much of a surprise, because if you look at CD Projekt Red's release history, they had Witcher 1, then Witcher 1 Enhanced Edition, which was a better version of Witcher 1, Witcher 2, then when Witcher 2 came to consoles, there was Witcher 2 Enhanced Edition, which is a better version of 2. Then Witcher 3 got a series of like lots of patches, but when Witcher 3 launched, it didn't get a good reception either. Like a lot of people were really upset because it didn't look like the game, like it didn't reach the trailers that they put out for that game either.
Yeah.
What happened then was like people came in like 2 or 3 years after that, came out after all the patches, basically playing the Enhanced Edition of Witcher 3, played this improved version, and they went into Cyberpunk with expectations of that. But the thing is, whenever like Witcher 1 and 2 released, they were a small studio. They're now the biggest European game studio. So it doesn't fly to release this like really janky game and say, oh, well, it's okay because in 3 months it's going to be a lot better. It's like release it in 3 months. Don't put it on sale now. And there's just a lot of conversation online about, you know, oh well, it'll be great when they patch it. But playing through, like, a lot of my issues aren't necessarily bugs. It is like the shallowness of the AI. Like, they could patch the bugs out, but they still need to find a new way to make police not spawn out of thin air. That's not a bug. That's a feature. Like, it's just a feature they don't have in the game. Like, you'll be on top of a building sniping someone, and 3 cop cars will appear beside you. It's like they there's a certain amount of like, oh, this is a buggy release, and a certain amount of they're still not done making it yet.
Yeah.
I think those are two very different things. Because a bug is like a quest might sometimes not finish, and it happens a lot in open world games. With the scope of that, like, you're going to get some like gameplay bugs, but it's things like the lack of AI in the cars, the lack of AI for police. Like, there's just a lot of things in this game that just kind of feel like it came out of the oven a little too early,
Yeah.
which feels weird after like so many delays.
There's
Yeah.
something that's just occurred to me, and I haven't seen anyone mention this. Do you think maybe this would have been a good game, good contender for an early access game?
Ooh.
You know,
That's a
put
good
it out and openly say, look, this game isn't finished. You know, we've seen other developers do it. Something like Ark, where they put it out and they let people play the game. Say it's not finished, but if you want to have a go at it now, fill your boots, and you still have to pay. I don't know how early
Or
access
Star
works,
Citizen.
probably
It's
a
the
lot
same.
cheaper.
It's still not released, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's that's weird. That's a double-edged sword because I think you get a pass for that if you do that on PC, on Steam in particular, where you see maybe this game's been in development for a couple years, it's coming out of beta, alpha, it's ready to go, but not exactly 100% up to speed, and people come in with those expectations, and that prevents the whole review bombing process and things like that. But I think when you're I'm going to use this term, kind of loosely here, but a AAA company at this point. I guess you can call CDPR a AAA company, right?
Yeah, they are definitely.
That's a weird precedent to do, because you haven't seen a whole lot of AAA companies come out. Like, for example, I mean, they should do it, but what if EA were to come out and say, hey, FIFA next year is going to be early access. It's still not ready because obviously it hasn't been for 5 fucking years. But you know what I'm saying? Like, it just looks weird to do that as a AAA company. It seems like it's just such a weird double-edged sword to play with.
You said there that CDPR would be considered a AAA company. I think they've maybe just lost that title,
Just double A.
In terms of scope, they're bigger than the European branches of Ubisoft, so they're definitely like up there in terms of size. But I think once a game gets past a certain scope and budget, early access doesn't work anymore, because like the idea of early access is meant to be, you listen to player, you do feedback and things, and that kind of works when it's a team of like even up to 100 people, where you have like these little like mobile branches and stuff where you could say, actually, we need to work on this, we need to work on this. But I think as soon as you've got like several hundred developers and a load of environment artists, if you find your community are now saying, well, why can't we drive this kind of vehicle? You can't really just take a branch of that off and say, can we add this feature? There's too much of a budget in mind and too much of a plan in advance. Like, it'd be great if they did, but I don't think this game would be modular enough to quite do early access.
I guess with maybe like some of the smaller indie titles, if they do the early access thing, they'll maybe get like 1,000, 2,000 people on board, and then they've got that little community and stuff. Whereas if CDPR had have done it, they might have sat down, in one of their meeting rooms and said, okay, so what was the feedback from the 13 million people that played our game?
Yeah, no shit.
Then you get like what I call like Reddit design, which is how they wrote Rise of Skywalker, where basically they just take all the opinions of like all these different people with their own idea in their head of what is Cyberpunk meant to be, and they're all screaming their ideas back to the developer. And then if like they're like if the community have like an idea they all latch to, but it's not a realistic idea, suddenly the developers are on the hook for an idea they didn't even have. Like, if the community comes together and says, we want this feature, and they say, well, that's not really the idea of the game, it's suddenly like that's another negative hit towards them of like, why didn't you listen to the community whenever we said we wanted romances with every single NPC?
Why is there no dragons in CD in Cyberpunk?
Yeah.
I want magic.
Yeah.
You start to see that happening a little bit right now on PC with, I'm trying to think, it came from Larian Studios, the ones that brought us Divinity Originals into Baldur's Gate 3.
Oh, yeah.
That's out now in early access on PC. And, speaking of that, Wayne, where you were joking about, having millions of people going, hey, this is what I think the game should be. You see just a little taint of that happening right now, because it's not the full game that's released and then they're going back and patching it. It's hey, we're adding the first part of the game right now, we'll add the rest of it later, like the rest of the story, et cetera, et cetera. You see that happening right now now for Baldur's Gate 3, and I think they're up to about 30,000 reviews or so now on Steam, and it just came out in early access a month or two ago. And I'm thinking, holy shit, how are these guys like, going through and compiling these lists of bugs and glitches and everything else? I mean, that's got to be a monster of a task. So I don't know if maybe that's why some of those bigger devs out there kind of stray away from that, because yikes, that's fucking huge.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, I guess to keep dissecting this, then. So, how do you think this game compares to other, rough or bad or just outright disastrous launches? And I know there's some loyalists out there that may not even consider this a bad launch because you think it's a good game, and that's fine, just based on your experience. Because the bugs and glitches and experiences we have are obviously different from what other people could have out there. But how do you think this compares to things like you'd mentioned earlier, Alex, like Anthem, Fallout 76? I'm sure there's a ton of titles out there I'm missing that just came out to really poor receptions.
Well, I think, and I honestly think CD Projekt Red can turn this around. They can go like full No Man's Sky with this game if they just put in the work, like get a good last gen version of this thing running. And I think it's completely possible. Maybe dial back the fidelity a little bit on the old consoles, but it is possible. It wasn't meant initially for all consoles. And then maybe they could think of, okay, next gen version, or what I've seen today, they're already talking about adding multiplayer, and I'm like, maybe fix the game first.
Oh, that is the other part of the Cyberpunk discussion. Is they did confirm before it came out that there's multiplayer coming, and the multiplayer will have microtransactions in it too. So that'll be interesting.
They were very back and forth on the multiplayer. It was coming, and then it wasn't, and then it was on the back burner, and then it will come out later on, and now we don't know if we're doing it, and now we are doing it.
Yeah.
And they didn't know where they were standing. And I think that was a symptom of the turmoil within the company. There was probably a lot of people in the company screaming, release this game, and people screaming, don't release this game, and someone else going, what about multiplayer? And everyone going, are you fucking mad? At the minute, have you seen the game? We're not developing multiplayer yet. I mean, it's like any business, it's got plenty of departments. There's probably a team, dedicated to the multiplayer. I think I even read at one stage that they were considering letting a third party do that. There's been a bunch of other games that's done that way, where one developer does the multiplayer, one developer does the campaign. But it's the obvious thing to say. The game needs fixed first, without a doubt. There's been talk of, well, we've got it confirmed, there is a fully fledged PS5 and Xbox Series X version of the game on the way. I think we were kind of expecting that around fall 2021. I wouldn't be surprised if that was further delayed as well.
Years down the road, even.
And again, it's within that company, they've got to prioritize. What do we do? Do we try and fix the current version? Do we focus on this next gen version? Do we try and get multiplayer out the door? It must be madness at CDPR right now. It must be absolute madness.
It's probably not like a good environment to work at the moment.
And then we all know, we've all worked. I'm sure we've all worked in horrible companies where there's bad atmospheres and stuff. And when that happens, your staff just start dropping like flies. Well, and again, that's going to just cause further problems to the development and the rectification of these issues.
Well, CD Projekt Red have a long history of that too. I think like 75% of the staff quit after Witcher 3. Because the conditions there are terrible in a normal week, because they get really underpaid, and basically people tend to kind of work there for a few years, get CD Projekt Red in their CV, and then leave. But like the actual turnover of staff after Witcher 3, like very few of the Witcher 3 staff are probably actually worked in Cyberpunk. Like probably upper management would stay, but a lot of like the day-to-day devs all quit. Like you find out with a lot of like Triple H videos that the turnover is like that big. So I'm just wondering, like, do they leave before Christmas and they actually have less staff working on now that do fixes, or will they actually hang around those 6 months? But I'm sure like a lot of staff after being the crunch that hard, and I imagine like the crunch isn't going to end. When you think of the number of patches, like everyone kind of talked about the crunch leading up to release, but then you think they put out like hotfix patches every 3 days after, and like people are working on those, like that crunch. Everybody else is like, that game's out, that's done. But for the devs, like they're still going hard. And I feel so bad for them.
I've talked about this before. I mean, we look at Cyberpunk and we go, this is a game made by the people that made Witcher 3. well, it's made by the same company. It's not necessarily made by the same people because, as you say,
That's
you've got that staff turnaround. It's like, I guess it's like a football team. 8 years later,
mm,
you haven't got the same roster as you had 8 years ago. So, should the expectations always be the same when a new game's coming up by a company that has created a game you've liked before? I don't think that's necessarily the case. And I think as gamers, we need to manage our own expectations and start to understand that it's not always the case. These
Well,
people
let
have moved on.
let me ask you this: when your favorite band puts out a shitty album, how do you manage that perception afterwards? Do you still go see them on tour? Do you still buy the next album? Or are you kind of like, oh shit, hold on, I don't know about this single? I mean, and no, it's not the same thing here. It's just that's a pretty far off metaphor,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah. Well, I
mm.
mean, that's probably more of a. I don't think you're literally asking me that question, but I'm going to answer it anyway. Every band gets a chance to drop a stinker, but if you drop two stinkers in a row, there's a problem there.
Deftones.
That's when I start to drift.
Oh, Deftones. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if it gets to the point where every release is consistently like going down, a certain point you need to call it. It's one thing
Yeah.
to sort of be around like, oh, what about the classics? But if the new stuff's not like, you gotta stop encouraging them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you guys feel like the criticism here is warranted? Because, I think of, the reputations of EA's or Ubisoft's and Bethesda's, right? Because we joke about it all the time about those games coming out in just absolutely horrendous conditions, right? Whether it be the bugs or, just the gameplay, it feels empty, whatever the case may be, right? We just know, those games are what they are. But do you feel like that's warranted on CDPR, especially already having, I think one thing that makes them different is the fact that they had the trust of so many people based on The Witcher 3, even though it's not 100% the same staff, it's the same company. And, like you were saying, Wayne, about those expectations, they gained so much trust from that game just from doing so many little things the right way with it. And then to come out and just be on the completely opposite end of the spectrum. I can't recall a time that I've ever seen that because we've never really had EA or Ubisoft, Bethesda's. They've never really had our respect in that sense, right?
I think what is biting this company at the moment is they build up this reputation. Hey, we're the good guys. We don't have any anti-piracy things on our games on PC, and we give you some extra stuff with the game. When I think back to Witcher 3, so they built themselves up. They built the hype for the company up with this weird good guys compared to others, and then they hyped up this game way too much. And I think this is going to hurt them in the long run.
Yeah, I think if EA or Ubisoft released this game, I wouldn't even got the reviews it did do, because a lot of the critic reviews were like really positive, 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10, and basically be like, hey, whenever this game's done, like it'll be great. I was like, okay, well, what's it now? Like it's you can't give it a 10 out of 10 and be like it's a mess. But like the number of reviews I've seen that even said things like, oh, I had bugs where the police would spawn in, and then like as more people play it, because obviously like the reviews are very small, like as soon as like millions of people are playing it, they notice patterns and they go, oh, that's not a bug, that's how it was designed. But a lot of reviews were like, oh, look at these bugs and naming some specifically, but it turns out just the game's designed that way, it's not a bug. And I wonder then, like, if they had that knowledge to it now, would they go back the same way? But like, I think it did sort of get treated a lot with kid gloves, and I think the backlash is completely deserved, because even I can't really think of any game that launched in this state. Like Arkham Knight and PC got taken off sale because it was a disaster at launch.
Yeah,
and
it still got mixed reviews to this day on Steam. Actually,
I think it's still not fixed, right?
No, if you don't have an SSD, it's basically unplayable. But like that got pulled off shelves, then re-released again later, and like that was the right move. They probably could have done more to fix that game. It was definitely the right move. Final Fantasy 14, they basically said we messed up, took it offline, and re-released it a year later, and now it's like one of the most popular MMOs. So there is a kind of recovery thing, but at the same time, if they announce in 6 months we finally fixed this game, is that going to be enough to get someone like me back in playing it? Like I've already finished it and I didn't think it was necessarily great. They'd have to like do a lot more than be like it runs better to kind of get someone like me back in, because it just, I've already played it. It's something like a No Man's Sky. They can enhance it, add new content, new things to explore, but I don't like for them to actually make enough changes for Cyberpunk. Like I think even with the bugs, like Cyberpunk is like a pretty good game. Like it's about a 7. Like if it had no bugs, I would put it at about a 7. But for it to get above that, they need to bring in things like Keanu Reeves and redo a lot of the writing in the game.
What do you think
there's-
Keanu thinks of this? Keanu Reeves has got to be just like, what the fuck? Because
I don't think he
I'm
cares.
sure he's not like an avid gamer or anything, right? And he's just like, what the hell is going on over there, dude? Like, I was a part of this.
Keanu Reeves is Keanu Reeves. He's probably patting them all on the back and saying, you guys done the best you could, great guys.
He's probably just
too nice to rip on them.
He's just probably sitting in front of his computer and saying, "Whoa, this game is not good."
I think he's been in enough movies that got bad reviews at times that he just doesn't care. Like, he'd be numb to it at this point.
Yeah. John, that thing you touched on about like some of the reviews, where they literally, you read through the review and they're slagging off the technical problems, the bugs, the glitches, and you get to the bottom of the review and there's a big 9 out of 10. I just find it's absurd. Like, I hate when people accuse, journalists and stuff of being paid off and being paid for scores. I don't believe that happens. I think if that did happen, that would be exposed very quickly.
It is happening. This is actually a thing that's happening. I worked for a magazine. And,
okay. We're getting the scoop.
How much did you take under the table, Alex? Can you disclose that?
That's the thing. It really depends on the magazine. There are big magazines who get away with like just harshly criticizing a game, and the publisher will still work with them. But if it comes like to the smaller publications or websites, then it is like, I'm not going to say what company or what magazine or what game, but I remember I wanted to really harshly critique a game, and then the lead editor said, you have to give it a better review. They just paid for advertisement on our website.
So it's not like directly here's so much money for giving us a good review. It's more like
politics. You could call it that.
Yeah, we've got a working relationship with these guys, and we can't sour it by ripping on. Yeah. I do think that exists. Like, I wouldn't disagree with that.
I think that's the thing. People kind of accuse a lot of big sites of getting paid off. I think like the bigger the site, the less chance that's actually true. It's kind of opposite.
That's true.
IGN comes out one day with this massive scandal. Like, we took $8 million from Activision to give Call of Duty the best game of the year award every fucking year.
Like, I don't think IGN needs paid off, but like, the number of times where people kind of say, I go to YouTube for reviews now, and you click onto a YouTube video and they're sitting there in a Cyberpunk chair with their Cyberpunk Xbox being like, I really enjoyed Cyberpunk. It's like, of course you did. Like,
but some of those reviews, to me, it's almost like, imagine you went on TripAdvisor and you've seen a review for a restaurant and it said, sat down, the waiter spat on me, there was pubes in my Coke, and all my food was burnt. 4.5 stars. You're just go, what?
Does this happen in Northern Ireland?
I was going to say something really offensive then, but
oh my goodness!
No, just England.
Well, what is your guys's what has your experience been so far? I mean, we've talked a little bit about your experience with the bugs, glitches, and things like that, but as far as the game itself, how does it play? How is, things like, I'm thinking of smaller details here, like the driving, how's, the story, all that other fun stuff that you'd expect to just, go into a game at this scale?
Here are the things that I actually really like about the game. I think the mechanics are cool. And I know John said he doesn't like the writing. I actually like the writing, and I actually like some of the characters and really felt getting attached to them. This is something that CD Projekt Red apparently does good, in my opinion, and that's why I think this game can still be turned around, because in its core, it's good. The core mechanics are good. The way how the city is built is good. It's interesting. There are little things to find, and if they can just build on that, I mean,
what is the world like for those of us? Because again, I only got about 5 or 6 hours in, and I was one of those that I was like, all right, I've seen enough that's just disappointed me. I'm going to hold back and wait till it gets patched. What is it like? I mean, I understand, there's obviously the outskirts area. There's the deep downtown inner city. Describe that for us, if you two could.
It's not just like the word itself. It's just like little details. You're just running or walking down like a street, and there's some like preacher at the side of the road preaching about some cult or something. Or you go into a bar and like you can order different drinks, or even in the outskirts there are different gangs, and they even fight each other, and that's really neat, in my opinion. It helps building the world and pulling it together.
See, I want quick go back. It's a bit right in a second. But for me, like the world's very much there's like different districts of Night City, and like some of them do feel pretty distinct, and others kind of feel the same-ish. Like there's certain landmarks you sort of pick up over time. Like I recognize where that is. I recognize where that is. But unless you put a lot of time in the game, I don't think you'd actually be able to like walk into a random area and go, "Oh, I'm definitely here" by looking around. But I guess it is again just a big city. Just in terms of game design, it's not quite leaping out. But yeah, there's definitely like there's lots of things going on like that. But I think like Alex, I kind of feel it's just a lot more like set dressing. But I also came into this just coming off the back of playing like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and
which I'm playing right now.
Yeah, I came off on Valhalla and I finished Watch Dogs Legion, and I think like in terms of like a open like in terms of like actual like world design, I'd say Valhalla is the best of the three. Then Cyberpunk and then Watch Dogs. Because Watch Dogs feels very shallow compared to the other two, even. But yeah, it's like the world's very dense, but I don't know, like there's not I just didn't find there was that much to sort of, it didn't feel alive, if you know what I mean. It sort of felt like a Disneyland designed a city. There's lots of things to look at, but not much to actually do. Like
oh, go ahead.
I never really found a reason to kind of interact with a lot of like the side areas or like explore them, because you'd explore them and find a couple of bits of junk, but there was nothing. I never find anything like interesting or off the beaten path. Anytime there's something interesting, there's a big question mark that says go here and find something interesting. And if there's not a question mark, there's the odd thing here or there you might come across, but it's not like anything in depth or too detailed. Like nothing really emergent happens.
So it's not like you can go and walk into like every single building, interact with every single object, that kind of open world we've come to see in a few games.
Well, not that much. Like you can walk into a lot of buildings and then like walk down the hallways. That's true, but you cannot go into every apartment or anything. It's still a little bit sealed off. Sometimes there are just like gates, and you can look past the gates, but there's nothing behind that. Yeah.
How does the story work for you guys? Because obviously, you said you're 40, 50, 60 hours into the game. John, you've already beat it. I guess without spoiling that for the people at home, how did the story stack up for you coming in with no expectations?
See, for me, it's a bit of a mixed bag, because like I said I didn't write the right in this game, but like a lot of like the side characters and their story arcs are really good. Like characters like Judy and Panem are fantastic, but I think like for all the characters they've written well, there's also just absolutely terrible right now. And for some reason this game it really stood out, where like some of the side quests in particular, like there was one mission we had to rescue somebody, so I rescued them and get a phone call from somebody else, and like the person on the phone says, well, since you rescued them, they've been talking about you nonstop. And I was like, well, I rescued them 3 seconds ago and I've looked at them the entire time, so that's really weird. Just things like that where I'm going, this right, and like they could at least like have a queue to wait like 5 minutes or something, but they have someone like pick up the phone and say, oh man, they're talking about you nonstop. It's like, that's not much time. Like,
that can't happen that fast.
If somebody like just saved me from a murderer like in an alleyway, I'd like to think they talk about me for more than 5 minutes. Like, but like in terms of the main story, like I think it's such a mixed bag, because I also like this could be a thing. Like, maybe you might have a strong opinion on this, but I really did not like Keanu Reeves in this game. I did not like his character, and like there's parts where like you're supposed to warm up to him, and I never did. And by the end, they're sort of treating you as if you're friends, and I'm going, every single story beat with this character, I dislike him more. Why is everybody acting as if he's my friend right now?
Does it feel like a celebrity, like with Keanu being in there, does it feel like a celebrity cameo in the game, or is it just the context that's off? Or, I mean, what is it that makes it feel kind of off there?
I just don't like everything the character does. I'm just like, he's a terrible person and a terrible thing. But then, like, I also think the dialogue choices don't help. Like, because even at the end of the game, where like I was pretty like contentious with him, but there was always like an option in the dialogue tree at any point where you give a really like friendly answer. And if I responded to him like, "Hey buddy, we got this," he'd reply to me and go, "Thanks, pal." But you're like, we literally fight every other time we talk. Like, there's no sort of gauge in the game to like, this is how friendly you are and these options are going to open depending on your relationship. It's just like you 1 minute you're literally like threatening to kill each other, and the next it's like, "Hey, I need help with this. Do you think you went right or left?" Like, why would you do that?
I think that's well known as LA Noir syndrome.
Oh yeah, it's fair.
Have you seen that, where you're like investigating people in LA Noir and you're just going through the motions of hitting every option until you get the right one? So one minute, like, you're sitting down with an old granny going, "Okay, please tell me where the murderer went to." and it's just sit and say something, then you won't get the the information you need. So then you hit the next button, and it's like, if you don't tell me, you'll be straight down the station. One minute you're being all nice, the next minute you're screaming and stuff.
I remember
I think
that.
you're right. Like the whole concept of dialogue options, I think within video games as a whole needs completely reworked. I think stuff like that, like exactly what John's saying. Like in Mass Effect, you've got I can't remember what you call it, but you're either a good guy or a bad guy.
Paragon Renegade.
That's exactly what it is. And the more you do certain things, the more it sways you towards one way or the other. I think they should have it that it locks things out. Like if you've been like a real asshole with Johnny for the last 20 hours of gameplay, it should start to lock out the nicer dialogue options so that it's not, killing that immersion and suddenly you're getting this dialogue that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, just about the story. I think all the side character arcs are all really interesting. All those characters are really well written. But for me, like the main story was just jarring dissonance between how the game's telling me I feel, because like V's not really a blank slate. Like they've got their own, like you're basically told their motivation and their personality, and so like it gets really disconnected. I don't think like the story beats it kind of like followed a path. I don't think anything surprising really happened. Like for me anyway, I wasn't like surprised by any like the main story beats like the entire way through to the end. It all kind of played out as expected, except I just grew to hate Johnny more and more the more I played. But like there's like interesting characters. I mean, like CD Projekt Red do really good characters, but yeah, I don't know. Like the whole time I was playing it, it made me want to go play something like Shadowrun, because I think that like the Cyberpunk story a lot better.
Oh yeah, Shadowrun.
Oh yeah.
I see some comparisons and some contrasts out there for obviously The Witcher 3. You can't get away from that just because, hey, that's their big previous title before this one came out. But I see a lot about this and Deus Ex. What would you say are some of the big, comparisons there? Obviously I know this game's first person. Anything else CDPR has ever done has been third person. How does this stack up to those games? And Deus Ex obviously isn't, made by CDPR, but just that universe gets thrown out there when you throw Cyberpunk out there sometimes.
I think it's interesting. Like there are things that are really comparable, just like the way the society in game works with everyone being augmented, or in Cyberpunk it's called you chromed up. And if you think back to the Deus Ex games, all the hate towards augmented people. So I see some similarities there, and also like how you can approach missions, because in Cyberpunk you can like hack your way through the game, or you can shoot your way through the game, or sneak, and it's the same like in Deus Ex. So I totally see the comparison, but I think for all those mechanisms, Deus Ex does it better, like way better.
Yeah.
Wow.
It sort of feels like Cyberpunk's a bigger world, both Deus Ex mechanics, but because it's a bigger world, it's not as handcrafted. Whereas in Deus Ex, like when you go to a building, you look at a room and you think, right, I've got like 5 or 6 ways I can go into this room, and you find a way, and you might find a really like hidden way and like feel like a genius. Whereas I feel like in Cyberpunk, like there were just times where like one part you're trying to go into a building, and like I go to one door and it says your strength stats not high enough to go in here. Go to another one, it's like, oh, your technical stats not high enough to go in here. Go to another one, says, okay, your intelligence is high enough so you can go in this route. And I went like, this feels really gated, and like if I didn't have the high point of those stats, I'd have to run in guns blazing. Like those are the only choices. Like there didn't sort of feel like any kind of creative way into a lot of it, but it is because like in Deus Ex the scope of the game is a lot smaller, so they can go, this is a building, you're coming from this direction, therefore we can plot these different entry points and we can plot these routes through. And with Cyberpunk being bigger and more kind of approach vectors, it's like I can see why it's more limited like that, but it just kind of does show how much Deus Ex did it better. And I think too, the hacking in Cyberpunk, for all the focus on the hacking is wizard spells in this game. Like it's not like I couldn't find a single door I could hack remotely from a distance. And after playing Watch Dogs, I had missions in this where I had to go in and steal something. And Watch Dogs, like you could stand at the nearest door to your objective, send a spider bot in, go through vents, hack terminals, basically like solve a puzzle and do it completely stealthily. Basically open the door next to you, walk in, steal the item and leave, and no one sees you. Whereas in Cyberpunk, like you have to actually walk up to a door and hack. I don't know if that's, obviously it's based on an RPG game. I don't know if remote hacking was in that game, but it sort of made the hacking to me feel like not like they could have done a lot more with that to kind of make it feel more interactive with the world itself. Because I think like all I ever, maybe there's more in the hacking tree, but the most I did with hacking was like disable cameras and disable turrets, or like make them work for you instead. So I think like things like that, like Deus Ex, kind of gave you more like if you were a hacker, you could basically just I want to do this, and this, and like ruin so many people's day. Whereas this is a lot more limited. It's basically like, do you want to cast fireball on this guy? But you're hacking them.
Noted. Noted. So, question for you guys, and this is for all of you, even for us, Wayne, I guess, even though we, haven't played that far into the game, but how does this impact the future of launch dates and pre-orders for you? Because obviously after seeing something like this, now I think we've all been kind of jaded here in the last 5, 6, maybe even 10 years as far as pre-orders go. But after something like this, do you still go out? Do you still pre-order the game no matter who it is, no matter how hyped you are for it? What do you think that looks like? Do developers change their expectations as far as launch? Do we see less of the, hey, put it out now and patch it later atmosphere that we're currently in? Thoughts there?
Yeah, well, like
go, Alex. You go first.
All right. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm like probably the worst example for this. I mean, I used to not pre-order games at all, but I'm a sucker for like goodies or collector's editions or statues, or as you can see. So if there's like a cool statue with it, I will probably still pre-order it. But if there's just like, if we're just talking about the base game, I don't pre-order at all, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. Yeah.
Noted. What about you, Wayne?
I said earlier that I kind of made an exception for this one, and I don't pre-order anymore. That is, I swear, that is me done. I will not pre-order a game ever again. I will, at the very least, and this goes for games that I'm hyped for this year. Resident Evil Village, Lego Skywalker Saga. There's the new Horizon Zero Dawn, the new God of War. I'm not buying any of those games until they're out, and it has been confirmed that those games run and function and work as they're meant to. And I'll say this, and I don't mean this. This isn't aimed at anyone here. I mean this collectively as the entire gaming universe. The more we buy these games in this condition, the more games we will get in this condition. We need to send. I know that I'm not going to change the world and change the entire gaming industry through the voice of this podcast, but we need to stop giving money to developers that are putting games out unfinished. Otherwise, they will just keep doing it. We're asking for it. We're literally asking for it if we keep funding this sort of behavior. The only way we can stop this, the only language these businesses understand is money. And we have to stop buying broken games if we want to stop getting broken games. And it's as simple as that.
It is as simple as that. That was deep, Wayne. Wow. So
I feel
very
touched.
prophetic. Yeah. No, you're dead on though. Absolutely. I mean, you see people saying that all the time. That's usually the top comment you'll see most of the time on social media, under a review, or if something comes out and it just sucks, whatever the case may be, you see and hear that a lot. And I think this game is really going to turn the tide for that. What about you, John?
See, I'm pretty much all digital, so like pre-ordering a game does nothing. Like if you pre-order a game, unless there's like some kind of like really good offer on something that I want, and like I know I'm going to enjoy it, I won't pre-order. Whereas like if I get like 20% off something for doing pre-order, and I'm pretty confident like I will take a risk on it, I don't think that's going to change. But in terms of like if you're buying a game digitally, it's not going to run out of stock. You're not going to wait for shipment. There's no point in actually buying it before it comes out, like, or at least before the reviews come out. Because I could see like if you want to like pre-download it and get ready to go at midnight. But like I personally like there's very few games I'm sitting up at midnight waiting for them to unlock. I'm happy to play them at 6 p.m. the next day. So it makes no difference to me if I buy it 3 days before or the day it comes out. But generally speaking, like I will wait for reviews to come out before I'll buy something. Cyberpunk is actually an exception to this, where I did pre-order it, but because I got it really like cheaper for pre-ordering, and I don't actually regret buying it. I think it's interesting, and like I had lots of interesting discussion of it. But partially that's also because I sort of like I work as a game developer, so like a lot of my conversation about it's been other game developers going, "Oh boy, did you see this?" And, like, oh, they forgot to do that, didn't they? So it's been interesting, and like as part of the culture, like I'm glad I played it in this state to sort of know. Like I'm always one where it's like there's nothing worse than like a mediocre experience. So it gives me something really good or really bad, and like that's when I'm happiest. So Like, I'd probably be slightly more disappointed with this game if it came out and like it was slightly less buggy, in which case I think it was just a mediocre game. Whereas when it's so buggy and all the stuff's broken, at least I can play it and go, check out this funny video I took, you know?
That's true.
Like a lot of my enjoyment came out of like making fun of it, but like I don't regret getting it. But at the same time, yeah, I think if anyone's buying digital day one on a console, it's the most expensive it's ever going to be. You're not going to get it cheaper.
Yeah.
There's no point in pre-order.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I'll say I wasn't disappointed in this game where it's launched because I didn't play enough of it to really make that assessment, other than the fact that I got scared out of finishing it. Because like you said, John, there is just nothing worse than getting through 50, 60 hours of gameplay and just having a mediocre experience, you know? When you budget for that kind of time in a game and you put all these other games on hold to go through it and it's just that's tough. So I can say I wasn't disappointed, but was just scared off here in the end. I'm still going to pre-order games like an idiot. But I am not that people that pre-order out there are idiots. Let me rephrase that. But I'm going to do it for the bigger games that, are still reliable. I think of, like you were saying, Wayne, Resident Evil 8. I just don't think they're going to fuck that up. And I have full faith in Capcom doing their thing there. But again, we've been proven wrong before, as we've seen here.
That's what I was going to say. I used to have faith in BioWare. I used to have faith in Bethesda. I used to have faith in CD Projekt Red. No studio is infallible. They can all screw up,
After the 3 remake, I don't know if I'd pre-order 8 because like I'm personally not a big fan of it, but I remember there was like a lot of people unhappy with the 3 remake.
I loved it actually. I really loved it. And I think it's like the speedrunners dream game in my opinion, or the completionist dream game. So completely tailored to me, just what I wanted.
I'm a weird Resident Evil fan. My Resident Evil games are 4 through 6. I like 6 more than 7 because it's so stupid and it's
what?
It's got some of the best third-person shooting mechanics, and like it's got really, really good like you can do like backflips and stuff, and I think it's hilarious and great.
It's got great co-op in it too, right?
I play through all those games co-op, and to me they're fantastic co-op experiences. As soon as 7 came out, and I'm like, this is actually serious horror again. I'm out. I'm too scared for this. Give me rolling on the floor and snapping zombies' necks any day. Like that.
I don't think I've ever played a Resident Evil game and thought to myself, you know what this needs? Backflips.
Yeah.
Boulder punching, maybe.
Okay.
But roundhouse kicks.
I'll leave the final word to you, gentlemen. So in its current state, we're here in mid to probably the latter end of January here in 2021. Would you recommend playing this game in its current state?
No.
No from Alex. All right.
No.
John?
Definitely not on console. Like, absolutely not. On PC, I got a pretty okay experience. Like, friends of mine have played it and enjoyed it more than I do. But if you can put up with the jank, like, I actually find a lot of my enjoyment of the game came from the jank. I think my answer is wait and see what to do with the patch, because it might not actually get any better. It could be less buggy, but it might not be a better game. It might be a less interesting game, but I think they got more work to do than fixing the bugs to make it like a must play. But check it at some point. Like, I think it's worth keeping in touch with the development and see what happens.
I just want to ask a question to you guys that have played it to kind of follow up on that.
Mm-hmm.
If we get to a point where everyone goes, this is it, version for talk's sake 1.85 is out now, and this is the one where, hardly any bugs, game runs really, really smooth, performance is great, this is the time to play it. Do you think you guys would go back and replay it?
Yeah, well, I stopped the game intentionally because I'm waiting for exactly this.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, John, would you play the game again?
I think it would have to depend on my mood. If anything else, I'd rather play. It's very
It's hard to go back and play games, though, isn't it? As crowded as the release dates are right now, especially, our backlogs are already huge as it is. It's hard to go back and play a game a second time through.
Unless it's BioShock.
Fair enough.
I enjoyed the game more. Whenever I got to the point where my character was a broken ninja samurai with a sword, I enjoyed it. But like thinking back, like I put 50 hours in that game, and at the 30-hour mark is when I went, oh, the gameplay's starting to get fun. So I don't know if I could do the first 30 hours again. Like the first 30 hours felt kind of, I wasn't a ninja samurai at that point. So
I think we do all have those like handful of games that are like an old pair of comfy trainers that you just can't help but go back to. I mean, for me, like, the likes of BioShock, I've played it so many times. A Link to the Past. There's a bunch of them, you know.
For me, it's like Castlevania Symphony of the Night and Bloodborne. Like I finished this game so many times.
Yeah.
Oh,
Bloodborne is a great game to always leave installed and go back to.
This is so
It's
true.
funny. I was just thinking earlier how Bloodborne came out so many years ago, and I still see people talk about it daily. And I can't think of any other game from like that old at this point that you can jump on Twitter and just see people say, "Man, I'm playing Bloodborne." Even the other Dark Souls games don't have the following Bloodborne has.
Yeah, I pulled the bass player for my band through Bloodborne the first time this year, and he was so opposed to Dark Souls and Bloodborne games. And now he's like playing the whole series with me, like all Dark Souls games. So just got him on the hook.
Bloodborne was my first. Like it really hooked me in. I bought a PS3 for Demon Souls. I imported Demon Souls from China because it was English because that trailer went, that looks incredible, and I bounced off it hard because I was like, I do not understand this game. Like it's too weird. Then I finally beat it on PS5, but Bloodborne was the first one I played, and like I bought all of them at launch. But Bloodborne was the first I went, oh, this finally clicked. Like I really like this.
You boys have a long road ahead of you with the Souls games. Godspeed. Well, any final words here before we go ahead and wrap it up?
No, I'm good.
No? All right. Any plugs or anything we want to throw out there? Where else can we find you guys?
Listen to Elder Druid. That's what I'm plugging.
Elder Druid, to go find them. Where can we find them? What is it again, Wayne?
Elder Druid. They're a stoner doom band from Belfast, and they're absolutely exceptional. Everyone should listen to them.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a great band. So yeah, you can check out my bands if you want to. I play guitar in a band called Worn Out from Cork, and I have like a doom sludge band. It's called Abysm. Check it out if you want to.
Love it. All right, good deal. So find the boys out there. John, anything for you as well?
Yeah, follow me on Twitter at John CGXIII, John CG13 in Roman numerals. But it's a terrible handle. But I post updates with everything there. Like you find my band Ravenlight there. You can see the different tech demos for games that I'm building that'll never be released. And lots of things like that happen on my Twitter.
It's a beautiful thing. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for being on today. I appreciate it. I know it's later over there on your side of the earth. So again, you just can't thank you enough for staying up late to talk to us as well. But if you enjoyed this episode, please do us a favor. Be sure you like, subscribe, share, leave a review. That helps us out a ton. We hope you enjoyed the Cyberpunk 2077 discussion. We're definitely going to put this game behind us for now as we move on to other things here in the very near future for Game Savers. Hope you enjoyed the upcoming episodes as well. But again, can't stress it enough. Be sure you like, subscribe, share, leave a review. It helps us out an absolute ton. So with that, we'll go ahead and take it home. If you have any questions for us, suggestions, anything like that, feel free to email us over there at gamesaverschannel@gmail.com. Again, that is gamesaverschannel@gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/gamesaverschannel as well. And with that, we'll go ahead and wrap it up, ladies and gentlemen. Don't forget to save your game.